Hello, BookTube, and welcome to the final mail haul of the week. We've had an up and down mail haul history this week, but we've got a few packages here. We'll get through them in a nice, timely, dispatchful manner without any spittle-flying monologues, and we'll be fine. So, I've got my assistant ready here. Although she's going to be a little disappointed to be chewing on something that isn't me. She's been chewing on me for the last half hour. What is that? Oh. All right, what have we got here? Okay, this is from FSG. This comes out in May. Okay, I didn't request it. It's by John Waters, the caricature director, John Waters, and it's Mr. Know-It-All, the tarnished wisdom of a filth elder. That is the cover. I'm very happy to send you a galley of the incomparable John Waters' Mr. Know-It-All, a new book of essays. I hope you will consider this for coverage in May. Okay. And it features essays about making movies, going Hollywood, cooking in restaurants, travel, music, public speaking, architecture, Provincetown, art collecting, children, death, and taking LSD again as a 70-year-old. And a bunch of other stuff, probably. These are Obiter Dictor. These are random thoughts. These are jottings. I'm not quite sure that I want to do so much violence to the memory of Ralph Waldo Emerson as to call them essays, but we'll call them something. They could still be entertaining. So, great. All right, John Waters. So we move on. Move on to this next one. You are already bored with the first package, so you can have the second one. There you go. Okay. All right. Much more comprehensible. Does this have a pub sheet in it? No? Okay. All right. This is the companion book to a PBS series. This is Chasing the Moon by Robert Stone and Alan Andres. Chasing the Moon. Yet another American moonshot book, because we're at an anniversary. There's some big anniversaries. D-Day is one. The Apollo 11 mission is another, and also the death of Leonardo da Vinci. These are all big anniversaries. This one is subtitled The People, the Politics, and the Promise That Launched America into the Space Age. Kind of a nice cover design, but no pub sheet. So I have to examine it like plain folks. This comes out in June. And I am a huge NASA fan. I have been a huge NASA fan as long as there's been a NASA. I've been watching, rooting for, loving stories of the American Space Agency forever. So this is an anniversary that I'm well and truly on board with. In 1960, Senator John F. Kennedy ridiculed the idea of space travel as a colossal waste of money with no scientific importance. A year later, the new president proposed the nation spend $20 billion to land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. More than a story of engineers and astronauts, America's moon landing, now celebrating its 50th anniversary, grew out of the dreams of a handful of people whose work led to the lunar landing. And I can read this story. I've read, I don't even know how many books on this story, and I could read them forever, so I bring it on. As many books as we can get. Then we'll do this next one here. Oh goodness. She likes to do damage, but she has no weight. So if she latches onto something and wants to use her weight to bring it down, she comes up off the ground. She's a tiny little thing. You'd never know it from the way she acts, but she's just a tiny little thing. Oh goodness. Oh my. Okay. Okay, this is from Simon & Schuster in late July. So this will be appearing in finished copy in late July. It's by Jean Edward Smith, and it's The Liberation of Paris, How Eisenhower, de Gaulle, and von Chotlitz Saved the City of Light. Wonderful. So World War II history. And Jean Edward Smith is one of my favorite writers. So let's see here. What? Okay. All right. Fine. Yes, indeed. Hi. Yep. How you doing? How are the kids? Yep. There we go. Following their breakout from Normandy in late June 1944, the Allies swept across northern France in pursuit of the German army. The Allies intended to bypass Paris and cross the Rhine into Germany, ending the war before the winter set in, but as they advanced, local forces in Paris began their own liberation, defying the occupying German troops. It's a great story. I've read it in a few different books. Can't wait to read it again, especially in the hands of a practiced popular historian and biographer. Jean Edward Smith has written, well, what do we have here? Professor Emeritus at the University of Toronto, and has written Bush, Eisenhower and War and Peace, FDR, John Marshall was the book that brought him to my attention in the first place, and Germany Beyond the Wall, The Defense of Berlin. He's a practiced biographer, so the biographical portraits in this book will probably be first rate. It's due in late July. It's been furiously snowing all day here in March, so I will, this winter weather, these sweatshirts, this portable space heater, all this business will be a distant memory when the finished copy of this book comes out, and I have lots to do in the meantime. So I'm very happy to have it. I'm glad to know it's on the horizon, but I'm going to studiously ignore it for a few months. So let's see what this one is. A finished copy of something. Oh, this is paper. She's a fan of all mail, but paper really gets her going. There we go. So what have we got here? This is from Harvard University Press. It's a finished copy. Probably comes out. Yeah, it came out on March the 1st. This is by Anthony Abraham Jack, and it's The Privileged Poor. How elite colleges are failing disadvantaged students. Let's see here. Getting in is only half the battle. That's how the pub sheet starts. Getting in is only half the battle. The Privileged Poor reveals how and why disadvantaged students struggle at elite colleges and explains what schools can do differently if these students are to thrive. In recent years, many of the most selective colleges have adopted need-blind admissions policies in order to ensure that their gates are open to students from even the poorest families. But is getting into the highly selective school enough to help the student succeed in college and in life? According to this book, as colleges work to diversify their campuses, they need to understand what it means to be a poor student on a rich campus. Universities recruit scores of lower-income Black, Latino, and white undergraduates, some from day, boarding, or preparatory schools like Phillips, Andover, and Choate, those who Jack calls the privileged poor, while others, the doubly disadvantaged, come from locally, typically underperforming public schools. Jack finds most universities are unaware of the diversity of backgrounds and experiences that poor students bring with them to campus. He analyzes what this difference means for how students, especially those from humble means, navigate college, and argues that we need to understand their experiences in order for them to succeed. Jack combines the deep study of university life through interviews with dozens of undergraduates as one of America's most famous colleges, and his own personal experience as one of the privileged poor to uncover what it's like to be poor on America's elite campuses. Okay, an argument-starting subject. So, and it came out already, so I'll have to get to it right away. It is squarely in the crosshairs of 2019's culture wars. So, there's a large part of me that, in fact, the totality of me, 100%, when 2019 began with a very strong inclination to avoid culture wars everywhere. They just erode your inner being. They erode you completely. And if you're not careful, they erode your morals as well. It's just better. The culture wars are better left just abandoned. Just walk away from them. Let the people who fight them for a living all day long on Twitter and on college campuses do that. They're already lost, so let them do it. But don't do it yourself. And I don't see there's any way. I will read this, of course, because it interests me. I think... needs-blind admission, some equivalent of needs-blind admission is, of course, a great idea. These schools, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown, for way too long, did the opposite, needs only, where if you had needs, then you weren't admitted. They only had eyes for their own kind and the progeny of their own kind. Something like that is a good idea, but it is obviously not Harvard University's job to bring those students up to speed. You cannot lay the blame and all of the obligation of a wide systemic social failure on a university that's trying to give you a great opportunity. If you are one of those underprivileged kids who has, I mean, it's danced around in the pub sheet, but I'm sure the book is about crappy secondary education, the crappy preparation for college. I'm sure that's what it's about. I mean, it's not... If you are that student and you get a chance through needs-blind admission policies or through, I noticed part of the pub sheet said needs-blind. In other words, we don't care where you're from. The other part mentioned vigorous recruiting, which means we do care where you're from. Either way, if you are from a poor family in suburban Baltimore and you get a chance to go to Princeton, they like the look of you. They like your essays. They like all the stuff the stories that you tell about your family and what going to Princeton would mean. And they say, Princeton can be a life-changing experience, and you seem like you want your life changed. So we will find a way to pay for you at this unbelievably expensive school. If you get that opportunity, and your crappy inner-city high school didn't cover differential equations or the English Civil War, then you have to make up that lack, not Princeton. Princeton has already done their part, but this author may argue with me, and it may end up convincing me. We shall see. It's right here. It's right upon us. It's March the 1st, so it goes on the March shelf and early on the March shelf. So, and argument starting. I'm still navigating a way to deal with this, with subjects like this on social media, because I don't want to leave social media, even though it has largely become the battleground of the culture wars. I don't want to even stop dealing on a critical level with books about the culture war, but I don't want to be part of it because it erodes your soul. It just corrodes huge inner swaths of you the more you deal with it, until you are not fit for human company. And I don't want that. I felt it happening in 2016 and 2017. I don't want it to happen. So I have to figure out, this book will be a very good test case, because I need to figure out how to deal with these things without just becoming a hermit who just doesn't deal with culture at all except to rewatch The West Wing over and over again. The culture wars have had that effect on a lot of people that I know, and I don't want to be one of them. That cowardice in the face of your own time. Why are you even here if that's what you're going to do? But anyway, I'll figure it out. But we've got 2 packages left, and we're still looking for... keep in mind that the 2 things that we're on the lookout for in our mail hauls all throughout the month of March, we are looking for mysteries. Because March is the month of March Mystery Madness, a huge booktube event that I'm happy, I'm honored to be a part of, where me and a bunch of other booktubers are celebrating all things mystery all throughout the month of March. So I'm always eager to get more mysteries, especially if they're finished copies with release dates in March. But also we're looking for mammoths, right? March is also the month of the March of the Mammoths, which is a newer booktube event that I hope lasts forever. It inexplicably did not ask me to host, but that's okay. It's meant to celebrate mammoth books. So if you've got Tome Topple, and like all the rest of you, I'm eager for the next Tome Topple whenever it happens. Tome Topple is 500 pages. Show some love to the books that top 500 pages. And Mammoths is 800 pages. Well, let's do the books that are even longer than 800 pages. And I think you could tell from my mental slip there. I think there's a very good case to be made for maybe not as big a booktube event, for books even bigger than that. What do we do with books that are over 1,000 pages long? I know what I would like it to be called. if 500 is Tome Topple, And if 800 is March of the Mammoths, then I'm pretty sure that we can come up with a clever title for 1,000 or more pages that has to do with Megalodon. But either way, we're looking for both of those, and we haven't found either one. This has been entirely nonfiction so far. So we've got 2 packages left. We'll see what we can do here. Somebody has chewed herself into a little bit of a torpor. So, oh, wow. Oh, my. Oh, okay. This is in June. I didn't know this was coming. Wow. Oh, fantastic. Okay. This is by Martha Saxton. It's from FSG, and it is The Widow Washington. It's a biography of Martha Washington. Just a stately little thing here. Huh. Did not know this was coming. Wow. Okay. All right, fine. So we have Martha Washington, we have Barbara Bush, we have Sarah Polk. Okay, fantastic. Although I don't think we've seen the Barbara Bush book on this channel yet. It's called Matriarch. There's a big new biography of Barbara Bush coming out that makes lots of claims for itself. And I've read a little bit of it and liked what I read, but I haven't received any kind of copy of it yet. So what have we got here? I'm eager to enclose an advance copy of feminist historian Martha Sexton's new book, The Widow Washington, a richly textured and sweeping retrospective on the mother of our nation's most revered founder. Oh, it's not a First Lady biography. It's about George Washington's insufferable mother. Oh, okay, The Widow Washington. I just assumed because, once George Washington died. Okay, this is not a First Lady biography. This is about George Washington's mother. Okay. Okay, well, what have we got here then? Dr. Saxton, who previous books include highly acclaimed Louisa May Alcott and a brilliantly researched Being Good, has spent her career as a professor of history and gender studies excavating the true stories behind women who have been overlooked or misrepresented or, in Mary Ball Washington's case, villainized. Oh, you've got an uphill battle trying to renovate the reputation of Mrs. Washington. Well, let's see. George Washington's biographers have generally painted Mary as a kind of brute of a woman. Unclean, crass, and slow-witted, a mother who embarrassed her children and would have done anything to hold them back. These narratives insist that, in order to build the great nation that America was to become, George had to detach himself from his mother. Certainly he tried. All throughout her careful research, Martha Sexton discovered that all surviving correspondence and legal records tell a completely different story. Okay. All right. All right. So you're a really smart, practiced biographer, and you have gone back to the original records, probably seen as many of them as anyone alive. You came out of those thinking, no, the portrait painted here is completely different from the thumbnail sketches. So you have 2 jobs to do in your book, and you could see the moment when it happened, when my predispositions turned to, okay, let's hear it. I want to hear it. You have 2 jobs to do, if that's what you're going to do. The first one is to present your case from all of that original research. The first one is to present your case without glides, without jumps of faith, without predispositions. And the second job you have to do is not quite as big as that, though, of course. That first job is your book. But your second job is also important. And a lot of people who do revisionist biographies, reputation salvaging biographies, tend not to do it or to overlook it, to downplay it. And that is, you also have to confront, explain, and justify why there is a negative reputation in the first place. Martha Sexton is certainly not going to claim. I don't know anything about her. I think I've read that Louisa May Alcott book, but I don't know anything about her. But she's certainly not going to claim that she's the first thorough Washington biographer, to put it mildly. There have been many before her. Almost all of them came to that same conclusion about Washington's mother. So you can't claim. I'm a little troubled by that word feminist historian. I'm hoping, I don't know anything, like I said, I don't know anything about this author, but I'm hoping that she doesn't take the stance of, well, what do you expect from a bunch of men? Of course they're going to misunderstand the sources that they've been reading. I'm hoping that I don't get that. That probably won't be the case. I don't think that FSG would greenlight a book that said, yes, there's plenty of documentary evidence that this woman was a brainless harpy, but the people who called her that were all sexist. So I'm going to say she wasn't. I don't think FSG would greenlight such a book. Okay, well, this fantastic. I am on board. Washington's mother. Okay. Okay. Well, Washington was many things. George Washington was many things. There's many things that I detest. I detest him. I detest the hagiography that is growing up around him and that is 20 feet thick and absolutely bulletproof. He was many things, but in his correspondence, he was incredibly frank. And if somebody was... the picture... You don't have to talk about a historical tradition. The picture that Washington paints of his mother is horrifying. So an uphill battle. This book has an uphill battle. I again, like I said with these earlier books, it's too far in the future. It's wedged into the summer. It's too far in the future for me to seriously think about giving it even a once through for a while. I'll be brooding on it. Unless it calls to me, I'll be brooding on it. And then later on, if winter ever lets up, I will start to think about getting to these June and July books. But that's intriguing. That is very intriguing. All right, and then we get to this last one, and then we'll be done with the last mail haul of the week. And this one is big. Oh, I just noticed this is big. This could be a mammoth. No? Oh, baby's tired. She's killed all the... Oh. Oh no! It's 704 pages. It's 96 pages too short. Oh, what do we call it then? A pygmy mammoth? This is David Rohl. This is a big new biography of George Marshall. Big, huge thing, but not quite huge enough. It's only 704 pages. Oh, wow. Okay, so this comes out in July. We're getting these summer books. This comes out in July, and it's just a huge biography of George Marshall. About bloody time. That's great. Nearly 75 years removed from the end of World War II, and nearly 60 years after his death, General George Marshall's legacy still lingers. Churchill famously called him World War II's organizer of victory, and President Truman described him as the greatest military man this country has ever produced, like Truman would know. Citing Marshall's ability and character, Harvard's president said Marshall was the only soldier and statesman in the history of America that could be compared favorably to George Washington. Marshall owned no slaves. He beat no slaves. He broke up no families. He whipped no little slave boys to death. As an example, to his other slaves. so, and also he won almost all of the military engagements that he led. So, yeah, he compares favorably to Washington. I'd say so. A generation remembers him as the man who saved Europe and helped define America's foreign policy for the 20th century. But today, Marshall seems barely human, more statue than flesh and blood, and some historians have seemed determined to tear down his legacy. David Rohl's defining account of Marshall's life and service to his nation restores Marshall to his place as one of America's most essential leaders, and offers a portrait of a man that is far more authentic and nuanced than previous biographies. Fantastic. Fantastic. I say all this time, those of you who are new to this channel, and are, again, wondering what you're in for here, biographies are my favorite genres. I love them more than anything. And I say all the time on this channel that you'd be amazed. Biography is a constantly self-renewing genre. It's not that you look at the fact that in the Victorian era, in the 1880s, there was an 800-page biography of King Henry VIII, and so it's been done. No, no. You are constantly, every generation is constantly reappraising and grappling with the figures, the grand figures and the smaller figures from the past. They're also grappling with the documentary stuff, as with that book about the widow Washington. You've got fresh eyes looking at old documents, maybe finding new ones, maybe finding new connections, maybe traveling over ground. And also there's the changing light of history that changes our perspectives. And so biography is constantly needed. New biographies of major figures are constantly needed. Sometimes it's overdone. I have often said I wish that I could rechannel the energy of the 6 800-page Napoleon biographies that come out every year into maybe studying other people. But George Marshall, perfect example of what I'm talking about. Perfect. He had a lot of, there was a big book that came out a couple of years ago called The Marshall Plan. That had a lot of biographical stuff about him. That was a very big and wide-ranging book, very enjoyable, but it wasn't the same thing as a full dress biography. So fantastic, although it doesn't qualify as a mammoth. That's very bitter. So, all right, so that's July. So most of these books that we're talking about here are summer books. When I will have windows open, when I will have birdsong in the air, when it will not be just this endless gray slate of cold and icy ground that you have to inch your way over, and sleet and winter. So I'm as intrigued as I am by a lot of these things. I am going to put them on a summer shelf and not really think about them as more finished copies and closer deadlines loom. But anyway, that was a fairly good mail haul. So we have a big biography of George Marshall, although not quite big enough. We have a new book called The Widow Washington that is going to try to renovate the reputation of one of the most universally reviled figures in American history, George Washington's horrible mother. I don't know how it can be done. I honestly don't. I know. That pub sheet said that the author found that in original period correspondence and documentation, a very different picture emerges, but I know a lot of that documentation. I can't wait. I will wait, but I'm very intrigued. Then the exact other end of the spectrum, something that came out yesterday that you need to read right away, and that's The Privileged Poor. About, in large part, the duties and responsibilities of the most expensive universities in the world. Then The Liberation of Paris by Jean Edward Smith. Jean Edward Smith is an author that I cannot recommend highly enough to any of you. If you see a book by Jean Edward Smith, even the Bush one, ended up, I've read it a couple of times now, and it disappointed me at first, but it's still really well done. It's just, but the more historical ones, the Eisenhower book, for instance, is brilliant. And the book on Grant is fantastic. So I look forward to it, but not too eagerly. Then we have one from the summer. This is Chasing the Moon. All year long, there are going to be big books and small books coming out on the anniversary of the moon landing. And those of you, there'll be a handful of you watching who watched it and knew what you were seeing, were old enough to know what you were seeing, to watch it in a little gray TV with a huge wood paneling because the TV is a piece of furniture. If you had told anybody then that I would have a playing card on a shelf next to my bed that had a TV, a computer, a calculator, a camera, a tape recorder, an encyclopedia that's constantly updated, an eye on the world. If you told me that all that would be in a playing card by the side of my bed, then I would not need a TV with a repairman who's specifically trained to come out and deal with it. That I would not need a camera or a calculator or anything like that. I wouldn't. No, it would have seemed far more unbelievable than the thing that we were watching on the TV at the time, which was a man landing on another planet. I just, and then the last one, Mr. Know-It-All, John Waters, a collection of thoughts and Jims and gewgaws from John Waters, the movie director. Not, I admit, my kind of book. He's certainly not my kind of director, not my kind of public figure. So maybe I will find a movie-oriented person who might be willing to look it over and perhaps review it. I know a few doors I can knock on. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap up. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.